Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 10th, 2024 East Lansing Planning Commission meeting. Mr. Bartley, would you please take the roll?
Yes, I will. Sorry, one moment, please.
I almost said 2023, so.
It's still January, you got time.
All right. Commissioner Boyd.
Here.
Commissioner Chapin.
Here.
Commissioner Denault.
Here.
Commissioner Hendricks. Commissioner Lapine.
Here.
Commissioner Overby.
Here.
Commissioner Wagner.
Here.
Commissioner Williams. Chair Sullivan.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you much. On to item 1.2, approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Boyd, seconded by Commissioner Denault. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. On to item 1.3, approval of the minutes from the December 13th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Lapine,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Over. Is it Overby or Overbay?
Overby.
Overby.
Thank
Okay, thank you. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. That brings us on to item 1.4, election of officers for the 2024 Planning Commission. I'll still be chair if you guys will have me. I don't know what to say.
Second.
Okay. All right. So that's is that parliamentary procedure? Just do a motion and second, and
Yes.
this is for the chair position. We still have to do the vice chair position. All right. So moved by Commissioner Chapin. And who seconded?
I think we all did.
Okay. Seconded by Denault. Seeing any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you all. Vice Chair, any interested parties at the end of the table, all the way to my left?
That's it's funny you say that. That's who I was going to put forth.
I'll consider that a motion.
Would you consider that a motion? Should I make it for motion? Well, maybe I won't make a motion before you consent or not.
I'm happy to.
Oh yes. Motion to appoint Commissioner Wagner as our vice chair.
All right. Moved by Commissioner Denault. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, guys, what are you doing to me tonight? Seconded by Commissioner Boyd. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Congratulations.
Great. Thank you all.
All right. That brings us on to item number 2, committee reports. I believe just Commissioner Wagner has an update.
Yeah, so we met the CDBG, the community-based community development block grant group, met last month just for an introductory meeting, and we're meeting tomorrow to discuss 15 applications for CDBG money. So we'll probably have a full report for you all in February, but we're meeting tomorrow night, and then we meet applicants, I think, sometime later this month, and then figure out recommendations for council for allocation of funds. So it's in the process, and things seem to be going well.
Great. Thank you for the update.
Sure.
Any questions? Seeing none, I think that takes us on to item number 3, staff reports. Mr. Bartley?
Thank you. Wanted to make a couple quick announcements and then ask the commission to form a committee. First announcements. One second, please. I just want to clarify for everyone in the room that items 7.2 and 7.3, which are old business requests for a rezoning, Ordinance 1523, and then a site plan to convert a former substation building as 683 Stoddard and other properties along Bircham. That request, but both the rezoning and the site plan request have been withdrawn by the applicant. So those will no longer be on tonight's agenda and are not coming back for future consideration, at least under the current plan. Also wanted to remind, and I'll mention this again when we get to public hearing 6.1 about Glencairn overlay, but the city staff will be hosting an informational meeting regarding rental restriction overlay districts in the city, just sort of in general, not specifically focused on Glencairn, but covering the history of the ordinances that created the rental restriction overlay districts, the history of implementation, and then a pretty deep dive into the ordinance language itself. We've found across several meetings that there has been a lot of questions about the ordinance language, about the procedures, what the overlay district means, what are the implications. So we figured, well, we're in process tonight for the public hearing and then potentially in a couple weeks for a vote to recommend action by the City Council. We felt like a informational meeting would make a lot of sense. So that meeting again will be on next Wednesday, January 17th, 6 p.m. right here in this room, the banquet hall at Hannah Community Center. And that's open to the public. We will also be recording that and live streaming it on the city's portal for boards and commissions meetings. So please keep that in mind. Chair and Vice Chair, congratulations on your election. Glad to have you both as Chair and Vice Chair. I wanted to let you know that the city is will be having a parliamentary procedure meeting or training meant for chairs and vice chairs, and that will be on Thursday, January 25th at 6 p.m. Requesting that the chair and vice chair both attend if you're able to. Again, January 25th, Thursday at 6 p.m. And I can send more details. There's limited space, so if others are interested, please let me know. But I can't guarantee space in that workshop beyond chair and vice chair. So as far as the master plan goes, I presented in December on sort of our framework for moving forward with an update to the 2018 master plan. And a couple items about that. Number one, we have a student group, a practicum group from the MSU School of Planning, Design, and Construction, the urban planning students who will be, their practicum is essentially their capstone project, and they're going to be leading student engagement efforts on and off campus, but starting relatively soon, and we'll probably be wrapping up those efforts in April, which is when we'll start really ramping up the non-student engagement portion of the update, and that will go through the summer. The student group I met with them this morning. They're all very excited about taking this role in our process, and they look forward to working in the community and meeting you. They'll be coming to the next Planning Commission meeting on the 24th to give a brief presentation about the scope of their work, how they intend to approach student engagement, and get your comments and advice. We'll also have them come back to the Planning Commission on April 24th, which will be their presentation of their findings, sort of a reporting out of what they've done and how it went, which will be used to inform our continuing efforts after that for non-student engagement. So with that, we would like to, I guess we strongly recommend that there's an update committee formed by the Planning Commission to sort of track what's going on with the update process, advise and coordinate with the students and consultants and staff as we move through that process. And according to your bylaws, which I've pulled up on the screen, the chairperson can create the committee and she'll appoint a committee chairperson and other members. I wanted to bring it to the whole commission for discussion or suggestions tonight. But we've recommended a few different options. I'll pull that up in a moment too. As far as the actual membership. Let's see here. Which is right. Pardon me, I'm trying to move the Zoom bar out of the way. Having trouble. Essentially, we request a committee makeup of your choosing, but we suggested several East Lansing's boards and commissions to have representatives on this master plan committee. Here we are. So I suggest 2 to 3 planning commission members, including the chairmanship of the committee, a city council liaison, commission on environment, downtown development authority, housing commission, human rights commission, parks and rec advisory commission, seniors commission, transportation commission, and university student commission. In conversations with city council members tonight, I realized that I had not included the zoning board of appeals, and it's been past practice to include the zoning board on such a committee. So I'd suggest potentially including them as well. And I also recommend other stakeholders that are not within the city organization, specifically including the Capital Area Housing Partnership, Capital Area Transit Authority, CATA, East Lansing Public Schools, Ingham County Health Department, and Mid-Michigan District Health Department, which is the health department for Clinton County, among others. Lansing Area Economic Partnership, Michigan Environmental Council, and Michigan State University. So those are, I guess, recommendations or ideas. Certainly open to suggestions if anyone on the commission feels that something's missing or someone shouldn't be on that list. I'd love to know about that now. But it is the commission's prerogative to create that committee and to appoint its members. We don't need to go to the city council to have those members appointed, by the way, but it is the commission's right. So with that, I look for discussion. I'm going to try to pull this up again. Questions about the master plan committee process or anything that I've mentioned just now? Here it is.
Commissioner Denault.
Would it be appropriate to have someone from the Historic District Commission on the committee as well, just given that I know there's been a couple of times when we've had to consult with them about projects that have scope for both of our commissions, so it might be appropriate to loop them in as well.
Certainly. Thank you.
Commissioner Lapine.
I'm hoping this is an easy question, Landon, but one of the groups that came up to me that's not reflected is the age-friendly community committee, but I also wasn't sure if having the seniors commission represented on this group would cover that. Like, can you tell me the differences between those two groups?
Sure. The Age-Friendly Communities Committee is a subcommittee of the Seniors Commission.
Okay.
I went and spoke with the Seniors Commission on, it might have been this Monday, either this Monday or last Monday. The weeks are blurring together right now. But at the last Seniors Commission meeting, which was here at Hannah, we talked about the master plan update, and we talked about specifically about the Age-Friendly Communities Committee. And I'll be meeting with the chair of the Seniors Commission, the chair of the Age-Friendly Communities Committee, and the staff person for the Seniors Commission on Friday morning, in fact. So we're going to discuss how should this committee fit into the process. At the Seniors Commission meeting, there was discussion that essentially the item was to discuss, is the Age-Friendly Communities Committee still needed? Have they completed their work? Generally, the feeling was no. They should still be meeting and still sort of working on implementation steps for the age-friendly action plan that was completed in 2020. But sounded like that might be of interest to sort of be happening, that implementation idea or tracking or considering those tasks as a parallel track that wouldn't necessarily require age-friendly committee participation on this committee as long as Seniors Commission is represented.
Okay, perfect.
So, long answer to a short question. Generally, I don't think we need to have the Age-Friendly Communities Committee on this committee unless you choose so, and that's certainly okay.
I'm really thankful that there's already been a discussion with the senior between those two groups. So as long as they're good with that approach, I'm also supportive.
Great. And the Age-Friendly Committee is actually going to be meeting next Thursday, and we'll have an outcome after that
Okay,
too.
perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
I had a few.
Joe, just one quick question. Is it correct to assume, Landon, that this will be a pretty public, transparent process, opportunities for the community to weigh in as it evolves?
Yes, committee meetings are posted in advance at City Hall. I'd like to put them onto the portal online, and you can take public comment, and the public is welcome in all committee meetings. So we'll make sure that those are in a public place. I recommend at least a monthly meeting. Myself, staff, and other staff, and potentially the student members will plan on attending that as well. And one more thing about this, the student group that's going to be working on this on the student engagement project is that they're also planning to attend the next University Student Commission meeting, which is on January 23rd, and are excited to work with the USC on student engagement efforts, and also will be plan to attend on Seniors Commission meetings as well to make sure that they understand seniors' outlook for the master plan as well. So, Mr. Sullivan.
I had a few procedural questions. So what is exactly the motion we're approving tonight? I didn't see one for the agenda item. Are we referring this to council for them to approve? Are we creating this tonight? Is there?
By the letter of the bylaws, the chair has the authority to simply create the commission and appoint its members. The commission could also do that in a vote, or could vote to defer to you to form that commission and work with me on getting its members appointed.
Yeah, my initial reaction seeing the list here is it's a bit rigid. I think you could add some language regarding the stakeholders, something along the lines of including but not limited to this list of stakeholders, and then put a cap in there for 10 or whatever numbers determined. That's typically what the state does with boards that it creates. And then you have 11 members from various city commissions, it appears. I'm comfortable giving you some autonomy there too, but I defer to the commission for some discussion on this.
One group that.
Commissioner Lapine?
Sorry, thank you. One group that I didn't see represented, and I don't have a good recommendation, but I'm sure other people do. I'd like to see the disability community somehow incorporated, and I don't know if there's a specific group in the East Lansing area that it would make sense to invite, but that's, I think, one aspect that would be missing that I think would be important to include in this kind of community planning effort.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
And I think there's any number of additional stakeholder groups we could think of at a later time too. So that's why I think it is beneficial to have a little bit more flexible language there, as I suggested. Are we expected to take action on this tonight? Was that your expectation?
I would appreciate that. I think that you could make the motion as vague as you want if you want to have some flexibility for the makeup, but I'd also appreciate as much guidance as you're willing to give. My intent would be to shop around essentially to request to all the different commissions during the month of February and the rest of January, and hopefully have this committee meet the first time in early March, and probably meet monthly until the end of the year, or as long as it takes.
I appreciate that. Just noting for the minutes that Commissioner Hendricks arrived at 7:23. I like the framework that you outlined here, and the timeline and the meeting frequency and the composition. I guess I put it before the commission once more. Is there any adjustments or tweaks that anyone would like to see before we potentially take up a motion on this? Additionally, are there any members of the commission interested in? Oh, Commissioner Wagner, do you have a Commissioner Denault?
No, I was just volunteering to serve on a committee.
Oh, you beat me to the punch.
I would also volunteer to serve on the committee.
Okay. Anybody else interested?
Well, I will confess I'm not sure what I'd be getting into, but yes,
good confession.
I'd be glad to volunteer for it. If there are others that want to volunteer, I'd be glad to let them go ahead of me.
It's an incredible opportunity. You'll get to provide a great service to the community. And
Well, great fun.
That's what I'm hoping.
To me, it almost seems like two motions, right? You're doing a motion to.
And this is probably a procedural question for you, Landon, because Chair Sullivan got me thinking about it. Is there a way, obviously, if you're going to go and chop this to the different commissions and committees, which I think makes great sense, is there a way to get updates about if they recommend for other groups to be added that this body could consider? I just worry about all of a sudden it gets huge.
Absolutely, and that was
Like,
that was a challenge. We had to cut off we had to cut off the list at some point.
yeah.
I think that's totally reasonable. I would suggest that perhaps you make a motion for a specific membership tonight, and then if there are additional suggestions from other groups, I would bring those to you as they're able to, as they come. This doesn't require formal action by the commission, yeah, so the chair would have leeway to appoint new people as
Okay.
needed.
I'm comfortable with that.
Noted. Yeah, and, I want to give you the discretion necessary to make this practical and workable. So, any further comments or questions? Commissioner Wagner?
I just
Or
do
Vice
have
Chair
one
Wagner?
procedural question. So I'm not quite sure I understand the difference between like the two groups recommended the commission, other than they're just committee member or people from different commissions versus stakeholders. Would everyone have the same vote, a single vote at the table? And would there be a case where we could get 25 stakeholders from different places that would outweigh a commission member votes? Do we care about that, or is it okay? I'm just sort of wondering.
The committee is
how
fully
we vote.
advisory, for what it's
Okay.
worth. And we'll be making recommendations to the commission in regards to how to approach the master plan. I think that the makeup is up to you. I've heard that, disability advocacy group, HDC and ZBA, we had that on. But if there are other stakeholders, the group could be 50 people, and that's okay as long as it can still make decisions or recommendations. How exactly that shakes out between commissions and stakeholders is
Okay.
the commission's prerogative.
Great, thanks.
Joe, I think
Mr. Chapin?
too big can be, I gotta figure this out, man. All right. So too big can be counterproductive. And I think you had some good words, some good language there about a cap, which I thought sort of captured things. So I might suggest that you put it into a nice, articulate, poetic motion that I'd be happy to second and support and so on and so forth. I mean, I think you had the motion pretty much in hand, Joe. So
Okay.
I would support your thinking there. And I think we need to give Landon some direction here and before we move on to the next item.
Agreed. Yeah, thank you for that comment. So I would entertain a motion to approve this, and then we can amend it. So is there a motion to approve this?
Well, could you just clarify what we're
Approving
voting
the
on?
creation of a commission, planning commission. Landon, what's the official term we're using for this? Creation of a master plan update coordinating committee. So yeah, usually there's a motion in the agenda item, but that's absent from this particular item.
Do we want to add your cap language to this?
So I
which
think
thought was
procedurally what we would
thoughtful?
do is we would entertain a motion and then we would amend the motion.
Okay.
I will attempt to make a motion. A motion to approve creation of a master plan update coordinating committee.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
Moved by Commissioner Dalton, seconded by Vice Chair Wagner. Is there any discussion?
I would have to, I think, agree with the spirit of the cap language. I think we don't want the commission or the committee to get too unwieldy. However, I wonder if by capping it, we're ultimately excluding some stakeholders who are important. So I think if we were to put a cap on it, I would tend towards making it rather high, higher than lower.
Mr. Chair, my concern about a cap is someone's going to have to enforce it if we reach the cap. So how will that work, and how will we decide who gets on and who doesn't? I understand the issue of it being manageable. I think that then the list of members here is already the extent of what I would suggest for a committee. But it worries me to set a hard cap, and then we would have to enforce it in some way.
Yeah. Mr. Bartley, who is appointing these individual members? Are these who's making the final determination? So each board and commission, I'm assuming, would have this as an agenda item, and they would appoint someone.
They would recommend or offer
recommend
a
someone.
member, and the ultimate decision would be yours as chair. I'll give you a call.
Okay. So the framework I'm thinking of before, there's a motion on it would be a dozen commission members, which I think is what you have outlined here as you list 2 to 3 planning commission members, and then 10 stakeholders.
It's gonna be at least 13.
Is there any?
Commission,
Is it 13?
groups represented once you add the zoning board of appeals.
Okay.
I also wonder if we need to think about, putting a cap, I'm making it up right now for the sake of conversation, but like, let's say we cap it at 30. And if there are more than 30, then we regroup and talk about whether there needs to be subgroups or subcommittees or something. If there's that much interest, which would be incredible if there were, but say there is that much interest.
I think about Commissioner Chapin's comments about how that would be a little bit unwieldy and counterproductive to the conversation when you have that many voices in the room potentially, so.
I would agree on the unwieldy piece, but I also think we've seen so much public comment on some of these pieces over the last year and a half that I think that we should probably be open to trying to be creative about what we come up with for this, so that folks can provide their perspective. I think opening this up for conversation is going to be, people are going to have input.
So 30 is the number you're suggesting?
That's with a lot of flexibility, 30.
Would you like to make a motion?
Sure, yeah, I make a motion to develop this planning commission committee with a preliminary cap of 30 members, including committee membership and stakeholders. I have to say,
Item
oh boy,
3.1. Yeah.
okay. I need to say 3.1.
Yeah, revise item 3.1, yeah.
I make a motion to rise item 3.1,
Revise,
revise item 3.1, to put a cap on the total number of committee members and stakeholder members at 30.
I think it'd be just committee members.
Yeah, I was trying to think it doesn't really matter between the two.
All right, any discussion
That
on
was
that?
a terrible way to say that.
That's okay, yeah, it's
There's a lot of committee and commissions in this.
this is new territory, yeah. Is there any discussion on that?
So from the parliamentary perspective, that would be an amendment, a friendly
Amendment to
amendment
the motion.
offered to Denald's motion. So you'd want to accept that if you're amenable to the amendment.
Sure, yeah, I'm allowed to agree.
Yeah. Is there a second?
I'll second the amendment.
Uh-huh. Yeah, this is just the amendment.
Yes, I
Yeah.
just second the amendment. That sounds like a reasonable solution, and I think
Okay.
it gives you what you need. Is that correct, Landon? Good, okay.
As long as Denald is in favor of the amendment to her motion.
I'm not necessarily in favor of a cap, but I will consent to the amendment.
I thought you were going to say 50.
35.
All right.
No, 30 is
All
reasonable.
right, so vote real quick. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Any other revisions before, or do you want to, let's do a vote on the entire agenda item. Is there a motion? That was just the amendment for revising the.
My motion still stands.
We have a motion on the table.
Oh, you're right.
from
We do have a
Denald's
motion on the table. Thank you for correcting me.
And Levine's amendment to that.
Let's do, this is a vote for item 3.1, creation of master plan update coordinating committee with revised membership to 30 members. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you. And also thank you for putting such a complicated agenda item.
I wanted to set the stage. All right,
Big project.
Yeah.
Big undertaking.
a good time.
I think we have another motion regarding membership from the Planning Commission. I think we should get that out of the way tonight if that's possible. So I recall Commissioner Denault and Commissioner Lapine, and I'd be interested in doing it. So is there a motion for those three members of the planning commission?
Committee.
Members of the planning commission to be on the committee.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Chapin. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Hendricks. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Oh,
I have some discussion. Chuck, were you interested in?
Yeah, I think he was interested.
So now we have 4 people.
If there's too many, I'll be glad to back out.
I will gladly back out.
I'll defer to you.
You need to have the chair, it said like have the chair on, so I'll back out. I'm happy to back out. I have class 3 days a week and I'll back out. I'm good.
Okay, well, I'm going to revise
That's fine.
the motion.
Yep.
Is there, I'll just make the motion. It's painful, you guys. A motion to appoint Commissioner Denault, Commissioner Overby, and myself to this commission being created by item 3.1 on the agenda. Moved by Commissioner Boyd.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Overby. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you. Great. That brings us on to item number 4, Commissioner announcements. Seeing none. Oh,
Nope, we're good.
real quick, just announcing Commissioner Overby's appointment and first Planning Commission meeting. So welcome. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on such an easy agenda night. That brings us on to item number 5, communication from citizens. Item 5.1, written communications. I didn't see anything in the agenda packet for this item, for item 5.1. However, there was several pieces of written communication for item 6.1 in the agenda packet regarding Ordinance 1528. So just noting that, and at this point we'll go to item 5.2, verbal from the audience. Since we have a full meeting tonight, we ask that you keep your minutes, your discussion to 5 minutes or less, and then please fill out a card identifying yourself, and then if the discussion is regarding one of the items on tonight's agenda, generally it's better that you discuss before the commission during that agenda item. So is there any members that wish to come forward to discuss any topics at this point? Yes? Yeah, yep. So we'll get to that when we do the public hearing for item 6.1 regarding these cards. I did have a card submitted for the BWL rezoning request from Rob Privet. However, those items were removed from the agenda, so if you want to discuss that now, it would be a good time if you're here. All right. Seeing no further discussion, is there anyone online in the queue?
There's nobody waiting in the queue.
Thank you. So that brings us on to item 6.1, Ordinance 1528, a proposed R01 residential rental restriction overlay district for a portion of the Glencairn neighborhood. Mr. Bartley?
Thank you. So tonight is a public hearing to discuss a proposed R01 residential rental restriction overlay district in the northeast part of Glencairn neighborhood. The request includes about 150 properties. I believe it's 149. And the proposed map, I'll pull up a better map. Okay. So the request is based on a petition that was citizen-led. Rental restriction overlay districts are a citizen-led district that can be essentially petitioned to the city council to introduce this overlay district, which restricts rental issuance of new rental licenses within a neighborhood. There are 3 types of residential rental restriction overlay districts: R01, R02, or R03. And R01 is the most restrictive, which, if adopted, does not allow the issuance of any new initial rental licenses within the boundaries of the overlay. R02 is differentiated because essentially, if an owner owns a property, if the current owner of a property, if and when the overlay district is adopted, would have the right to apply for a Class 1 rental license at their property, but once they sell that property, the new owner would not be able to apply for the same I guess, for a license. They would be prohibited from receiving a Class 1 rental license. And then RO3 is the least restrictive of the three types, which disallows all rentals in the neighborhood except for Class 1 rental license. So new Class 1, which is owner-occupied with one roomer, new Class 1s would still be allowed. So what's requested as part of this petition is an RO1, which would prohibit new rental licenses in the district altogether. There are currently 20 districts within the city, a mix of RO1, RO2, R3. I would say the majority are RO1, and mostly below south of Lake Lansing Road, but also there's one up in, I want to say Hawks Nest area near the golf courses on Chandler. So what you see before you is a proposed map. There have been several questions about how this map came to be. So I'll give you a real quick rundown on the process so far. We had petitioners from within the neighborhood approach staff. I believe it was a couple months ago. I'm forgetting the exact timeline right now, but we discussed a potential outline using this map, which shows existing rentals. Those are the spaces that are colored in. And the applicant had originally proposed a larger area that included more properties, especially to the north and east. In discussions with the city attorney, the requirements for an overlay boundary basically required that the boundaries be on streets, alleys, zone district lines as much as possible. And it can also must include only properties that are zoned R1, R2, or RM8. And all the properties in this area are R1 and R2, except for Shaw Park, which would not be included, or I guess would not have this overlay apply. So the boundaries were changed based on advice or the direction of the city attorney to follow street lines. So that's how we resulted in this current outline that includes 149 properties. The procedure to establish a district is that the petitioners then go out and distribute a rental restriction overlay information sheet that's provided by the city, which we provided and they distributed. And then at least two days after the distribution, return to the neighbors and ask them to sign a petition, at which point the neighbor signs and dates and checks a box saying, yes, I did receive information, and including the informational sheet. At least 2/3 of property owners in the subject district must sign. Originally, there were not quite enough signatures. We returned the petition to the petitioners, and they went back out and were able to obtain the balance of their signatures, so they came in just over the 2/3 threshold, which was enough to, I guess, accept the petition. Once the clerk and the assessor's office had verified all the signatures, they then turned it over to me to make sure that the boundaries and the proposed overlay met the requirements of the zoning ordinance, which it did. At that point, we drafted an ordinance, which is included in your packet, and brought that to City Council to introduce and refer to the Planning Commission. The City Council did so on December 5th of last year, and the introduction of the ordinance for referral to the Commission, the active introduction puts in place, according to the ordinance, a automatic moratorium on any new, on the issuance of any new rental licenses while the question is pending. So as of December 5th, there is now a moratorium on the issuance of any new rental licenses within the outlined district. Tonight's question is simply to take public comment. As I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we'll be hosting a staff-led informational session next week, next Wednesday, 6 p.m. here in Hannah in the banquet room, just to try to cover all the rules, all the history, and the finer points of what RROs are, and also to cover questions about rental licenses and procedures with that. So again, that will be here in this room next Wednesday, the 17th at 6 p.m., and the public is welcome. So we hope to hopefully clear up any concerns, misunderstandings, misinformation about the ordinance procedures or requirements for these districts. And then the following meeting, which would be the 24th, you're requested to take action to recommend approval or denial by the city council. So with that, I guess, are there any questions for me at this point about what's proposed or where we go from here? Yes.
Vice Chair Wagner?
Thanks for that report, it's great. I do have just one question about boundaries. It's a very weird shape, right? And I mean, I'm a political scientist, I'm interested in congressional boundaries and this sort of thing, but why not go all the way to Abbott and Saginaw? Is it because the homeowners didn't want to be in this? I mean, do you know why it's not more inclusive or larger?
I'm not sure if the original petitioners can speak to it tonight, but my understanding is that the original proposal was more inclusive of more properties. On the screen, you can see that right up along Saginaw are a couple of rental licensed right now. Looks like 419, 341,
Right.
and 331 Saginaw. There may have been a calculation about keeping those current properties out of the district to not create some sort of nonconformity.
I thought that too, but there are also rental properties within the district suggested, like 500 and 240.
Yep.
So,
Two of them, right?
yeah, so I mean, I don't know.
Class 1
I mean,
and Class 4.
I'm sure there's a reason for it, but it's curious to me.
I think one of the things is, someone that lives in that neighborhood, the streets are just shaped a little interestingly. And my understanding is back in the day, a lot of those used to be cow trails that kind of followed the topography, and that's what led to their current shape. So,
Oh, no, I'm not I'm not commenting on the shape of the streets. I'm talking about the boundary itself. Like, why doesn't it go all the way to Saginaw
well,
and Abbott?
it conforms with the streets on the northeast portion, doesn't it? Yeah.
I'm sorry, we do have a public hearing
Yeah.
coming up,
Yeah.
in which we can take public comment,
Yeah,
but
please refrain.
so my understanding is that essentially based on the city attorney's points and direction, the petitioners reduced the size and followed those streets. The city council does not have to approve if they were to approve the overlay district, they don't have to approve it following the lines that are proposed. They could change it. They could change the boundaries. If it's reduced, they would have to ensure that 2/3 of the property owners within the reduced area had signed. So we need to look for that. But the city council would have the opportunity to change that. There has been a lot of discussion in the neighborhood, a lot of meetings. We hosted a neighborhood meeting, or I guess an informational meeting, I want to say at the library in late October. I know the Glencairn Neighborhood Association had its own meeting, I think at Sidebar, and we had staff there to discuss that. We do have, there is a proposal for another district, but their map that they proposed didn't meet I should say, a sort of competing district within the same area. The map that was submitted did not meet the requirements, and we had to return it. We haven't received an amendment yet, so that really isn't technically material to this request tonight, but I wanted to be aware.
Commissioner Overby, did you have a question?
I did of Landon. So you mentioned that the city attorney made a recommendation to change these boundaries. Well, what was their thinking and rationale, and so why did they want to do that?
Yeah, my understanding is that the lines originally drawn were cutting through backyards along the boundaries between properties instead of along streets, alleys, or zone district lines, which is what is required by the ordinance. So they said, got to follow streets or zone district lines. I know that along Abbott, at one point, the zoning changes to ARM 32 right along the street, fairly close to this, just outside the boundary of this map. And so those properties couldn't be included. And cutting out the zone district line would have ended up potentially being problematic, according to the city attorney. So this is how we ended up with this map. I should also mention, I know that I've had some conversations with neighbors about how did this boundary come to be, and beyond saying, well, the city attorney said so, it's somewhat difficult for me to speculate. But I do want to mention that the establishment of a residential rental restriction overlay district, like what's proposed, has no bearing on the neighborhood boundaries, on any other boundaries. There are 3 other districts, restriction districts within Glencairn already to the west and south and southeast, I believe. So those really have no bearing on the neighborhood, larger neighborhood, except that you're leaving out a corner of the neighborhood out of this overlay. So potentially, if this current overlay were to be approved as proposed, you could see potentially another request at some point to fill out the rest of the neighborhood, as long as they can meet the requirements for the boundaries.
Just noting, I think page 12 on the agenda packet gives the best view of the outline of the proposed boundary. So just following up on something that Vice Chair Wagner raised regarding the 2 rentals that currently exist within the boundary. So those would be permitted to maintain, correct? So unless they, for whatever reason, the license lapsed?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, existing license requests or existing licenses would not be affected until they are abandoned.
Okay. And then, this is a little down the line, but it appears pretty rigid. And I know prior to you joining the city, there was a series of discussions regarding accessory dwelling units, ADUs. So under this R01 rental restriction overlay, that would likely be a prohibited use, correct?
Correct. I mean,
without having an ordinance. On
right
the
now,
use, but it would-
accessory dwelling units are not generally allowed except for in one district, the neo-traditional development district, which I think is only in one place. I want to say it's over in close to Hagedorn and Bircham. So other than that district, ADUs are not generally allowed anyway. Should ADUs be allowed,
Yeah.
if they were to be rented, if they were to meet the requirements for a rental license, then they'd have to get a license.
Yeah, I understand that
Oh.
because we don't have an ordinance on it yet, but
Yeah.
let me ask it a different way. So
Okay.
this would potentially preclude, I guess, depending on how the ordinance is written, any sort of rental on any property within this boundary, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And right now, the ordinance doesn't discriminate between, or differentiate, I should say, between short-term rental and long-term rental. There are several exceptions that are built into the ordinance, exceptions to requiring rental license, I think 7, which we created an infographic.
On page 25, yeah, that was very, very
Thank you.
helpful. I thought that was,
Here's our announcement, so everyone can see that for next week. Again, Wednesday the 17th, 6 p.m. here. The infographic that we sent out, and this went out as a mailer with the public hearing announcement as well, just sort of trying to describe the different types of RRO, what does not require, and lays out the 7 exceptions to the rental license requirements, definition of family, and then a discussion about the procedures for establishing an overlay district. So beyond these 7 requirements, or excuse me, 7 exceptions, rentals in any restriction overlay district, an R01, are completely prohibited.
so when the petitions were signed, it was specifically for an R01. Right?
That's correct.
That was what they intended. Okay, that answers my question. Commissioner Chapin?
So connecting back to Commissioner Wagner's comment about the boundary, I don't know if, you know what, I don't know if it's important that I have this there or not. But anyway, connecting back, I just want to make sure I can frame the conversation tonight, next week, and the following week correctly. Is it correct for me to assume that what's in front of us as a planning commission is simply the boundary that has been proposed and has been petitioned successfully by the neighborhood? The city council, we don't have any authority to change the boundaries.
Well,
Planning commission.
We're not approving or
Right,
denying
right.
anything.
Now,
We're
I
making a
understand that tonight, but I'm
recommendation
kind
for
of
council.
framing this for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
It doesn't, we don't have any authority to do anything other than support the petition or not support. However, the city council can change the boundaries at their city council meeting without connecting to specific signatures from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. It just helps me.
Yeah.
I can understand that.
To
Okay.
clarify my comment too, like, we don't approve or deny anything, we just make recommendations to council for them to approve or.
I'm
yeah.
sorry, I understand that too.
And in your recommendation, if your recommendation was to approve, you could also make suggestions, but it would still be a recommendation.
Okay, all right, fair
Yeah.
enough. That helps, thank you.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, at this point, we will open the public hearing. And just to clarify, we're not taking action on this item tonight. So that is expected potentially at the next meeting in 2 weeks. And I do have a series of cards up here, so I will just start from the cards. Mike Frenda, is that right? Sorry, I'm trying to read the penmanship. Or is it Mike French? Yeah, sorry. I have bad penmanship, so.
Hi, my name is Mike French. My wife Melissa and I live at 321 Clarendon, which is in the proposed overlay district, which is what we'd like to speak to tonight, or I would like to speak to. We've commented twice at the previous city council meetings regarding this. We're in the proposed overlay neighborhood. I don't want to reiterate all of that, and it sounds like the Planning Commission has, I don't know how much control you folks have in order to direct the changing of any boundaries. It was just commented that you don't have that authority, but maybe the suggestion that the boundary could be changed. When we take a look at this, we live on the south elevation of Clarendon Road, the south side of Clarendon Road. Our neighbors directly across the street, which is in the same neighborhood, the same low traffic street. These are houses all built at the same time, occupied by similar users. It makes no sense for my neighbors directly across the street from me to be zoned different than I am. And that's first. Secondly, we take a look at the boundary and the map that's presented now on the screen, which shows how many rental licenses there are in this 149 parcel map. There are almost none. There's very little history here of a rental problem in this neighborhood. Thirdly, it's been commented to us, including by the folks who brought the petition to our doorstep, that this is out of a need to prevent Airbnbs from coming into the neighborhood, which I understand. When I look at Airbnb, there are no listings for properties, but maybe that's because they can't get a license to do it. I don't know. It's also been commented that there have been new requests to the city for an Airbnb license of some kind. And I understand that could be a problem, but it's not a problem yet. We can't prevent every problem. We can't legislate what's the next real estate innovation that's gonna come down the line? Something in fractional interest? What's the next innovation where we're gonna have to come in and say, well, we're gonna have to take this real property right away from you too, Mr. French, because, well, we're worried about this use. The boundary's arbitrary. It doesn't include my neighbors directly across the street. It completely bisects this neighborhood. We just suggest that in your comments back to City Council when you've had an opportunity to vote on this, please exclude 321 Clarendon, or make the suggestion that it's excluded. Our house and the 4 houses directly to the east of us, which is this little loop at the top of the map, all of us don't want to be included. There are 3 of the 5 homes to our west before the next boundary street that also do not want to be included. It's arbitrary to begin with. So we just suggest that our home be excluded and the 3 houses to the right of us be excluded because we don't care to be in it. We think it's a taking of our real property interest without compensation. It's not done by planning experts. It's done by neighbors and a city attorney who made suggestions about where the boundary should be. So that's our comment. Appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Carol Hetherington.
Hi. And I commented before Just to reiterate, I've been in the neighborhood 33 years. I lived on Terrain, which was part of an overlay, then on Rosewood, which we thought was an overlay and it was not, and then now we've downsized to Sunset. I never, in all these moves we've made, we never considered leaving the neighborhood. We always knew that we were going to stay in Glencairn. Partially because of the tree-lined streets and the unusual, distinct houses and the safety and the aesthetics of the neighborhood, but mostly because of the community and the people. And I happen to know a lot of people because I've lived all over the neighborhood, and they have been wonderful. When my husband was very ill, everybody was there for me. People fixed my fence, took care of my dog, these kinds of things. And when he passed, the support continued. So for me, the idea of changing the neighborhood by adding rentals is just not acceptable. And the people that I speak with, who, and it's a lot of people, we're all opposed to rentals. The safety, the security, the desirability, the property values, kids walk to school every day in the Glencairn neighborhood, and it's very important for us that we know our neighbors, and that we know who is living there, and that, and I mean, some of the people have been there a really long time. One of my favorites was born in 1928, and he walks the neighborhood every single day. Norman does, and we talk, because I walk. So I mean, these are the things. These are the reasons people want to maintain the neighborhood. It's the security, the safety, the community, and by bringing in rentals, that will change the atmosphere of the neighborhood. And yes, there were 3 requests for rentals that we know of right now, but if we don't have an overlay, it's a slippery slope. And that's our concern. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Eleanor Holbrook?
Hello, and thank you very much for having this hearing. I'm Eleanor Holbrook. I live at 812 Lantern Hill Drive. That is not in the Glencairn neighborhood, but I want to speak from both a personal and a professional point of view and give you a little other perspective. When my husband and I first came to town, this is a long time ago, it was 1958, there was very little rental restriction. In fact, my husband as a student lived in the Bailey district in an attic. And there was a lot of attics filled with lots of students. So there was very little health and safety regulation, very little regulation at all. Then when we were able to buy a home, we bought it in the Lantern Hill neighborhood, which is a lovely, quiet neighborhood now. We were very surprised when we moved into this beautiful residential neighborhood with very large lots that there were 3 rentals adjacent to us, unlicensed. Students, no families, students came in. And you probably realize that quite often it's students because that's where the money is. The average family can't really quite afford a rental, a home in the city of East Lansing because of the competition of student rentals that take in so much more money than just renting to a family. So we were very surprised. So I was very happy when there was a petition that was circulated, and I helped circulate it, in the Lantern Hill neighborhood to bring an overlay in so that we would become a quiet residential neighborhood again. And you know what I'm talking about. We're talking about more cars, more trash, more noise. It's just a different lifestyle that comes in when there are younger people who move in as students. The other thing I wanted to say is I am a residential real estate broker, and I have practiced in this area, particularly with faculty members. That was most of the clients whom I had. And they would come from other universities, and the other universities also had rentals to students in neighborhoods, and so they understood what was happening. And they would ask me invariably, when I take them into a neighborhood, what is this neighborhood like? are their student rentals. So it's particularly students. We're not talking about renting to families. We're talking about students and the different kind of lifestyle that they have. So from 2 points of view here, I have seen what happens when there aren't overlays, when there aren't real restrictions to preserve the quiet and the comfort of the residential neighborhoods. So I urge you to support the ordinance that would continue and expand the overlay in the Glencairn district. However, it turns out that whatever it covers, but to try to maintain that very beautiful neighborhood as it is and as people want it to be. I think the fact that there are no B&Bs, or very few now, doesn't mean anything, because there will be more B&Bs if they are allowed. You may have seen the City Pulse editorial this morning that just came out that was specifically about this meeting tonight and mentioned B&Bs and the fact that in Ann Arbor they have banned B&Bs. And if you've been reading the New York Times lately, you will see that that's front and center in the big cities right now. And some cities are making sure that there are no B&Bs. And it's for the same reason, that you get people who come in and are not part of the neighborhood, and they rent for a very brief time, and they use the house in a way that usually is celebrating something like a big football game. So thank you very much. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you for your comments. S. Frachik, or Frachel? Was I close?
It's Frachel, thanks,
Frachel.
it doesn't matter. Thank you for your careful review of the rental overlay. I asked the Planning Commission to closely examine the nuances of the ordinances and the potential for discriminatory enforcement. I'll share a brief example. Our family was subjected to an unnecessary, frightening police call. This was many years ago. The police explained that someone had called about strange packages and a possible bomb. They found nothing, but this was when a young minority was visiting our home. Not a student, but a friend of the family. Another neighbor on Sunset confided to me that her family went through a similar experience when they invited a minority MSU student over for dinner. Uneven enforcement that relies on such complaints is dangerous and unjust, out of touch with our community's demographics and what we think of as an understanding and welcoming community. I urge the Planning Commission to review zoning, over occupancy, and rental license complaints and violations. How many of these cases are quickly closed or dismissed? Why are the fines retroactive? Are most complaints connected to corporate or small landlords? Is there a discriminatory pattern based on race, age, gender, family status, or other factors? East Lansing does not need another lawsuit, and there should be public reports on these cases. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Beverly Bonning. That's Robin.
Good evening. Thank you for your opportunity to address the commission tonight, and thank you for your service on the commission. Sorry, I'm coming down with laryngitis. I'll do the best I can. My husband, Jeff Lipinski, and I reside at 601 North Lawn Avenue, and that's at the corner of Roxburgh and Glencairn. We've owned our home for over 25 years, and we've resided in East Lansing for approximately 30 years, where we raised our 2 children. We specifically chose East Lansing for its racial diversity, its walkability, its excellent school system, the unique and beautiful neighborhoods and parks, a world-class university, and of course, our energetic and vital MSU student population. We have no regrets. East Lansing is truly a unique and wonderful place to live, to work, and enjoy our lives. Our community identity, our values, and our ideals are, to a great extent, defined by our healthy and friendly and stable neighborhoods and those who reside within them, where neighbors know and watch out for each other, where they greet each other on the street and engage in conversation. This is one of our greatest assets of our community. This is a value system that is not always found in every community, but it is found here. We're here to express our support for the overlay district for the reasons that many will express to you tonight. There will be a significant and negative long-term consequence for Glencairn neighborhood if the overlay district is not approved. I understand the ambiguity of some of the boundaries. I'm one of those who likes clear boundaries in legal definitions. But if you look at the overlay districts within East Lansing, they're all amoebas in many different ways. For example, although our home is within an existing overlay district, those homes directly across from us on Roxburgh are not, and those properties are vulnerable, as is ours, to the negative impact of short-term rentals, be it Verbo or Airbnb. Approving the overlay district will provide congruence to the existing overlay map in the neighborhood, and that will more closely match the neighborhood's boundaries as they currently exist, albeit it's not perfect, but it's a better match. Those who support the expansion of rentals in our neighborhoods assert that short-term rentals are available in other large municipal communities, large metropolitan areas, so why not in East Lansing? More specifically, Glencairn. Comparing our community to large metropolitan areas, even mid-sized cities such as Grand Rapids, East Lansing is not a large metropolitan area that can readily absorb short-term rentals, particularly in its small established neighborhoods. Airbnbs or other third-party rental operations are better suited for pre-existing designated high-density multi-purpose areas that can absorb the impact of short-term and long-term rentals. Glencairn is not that. Finally, expanding short-term rentals, such as Airbnbs and Verbos, take existing family residences off the books, so to speak. Once any of these proposed rental licenses or others in the future are granted, and they are coming, it is highly likely that that home will no longer be used as a family residence now or in the future. That has a direct and immediate negative impact on public school enrollment. Therefore, I urge the Planning Commission to recommend to the City Council that it approve the overlay district. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey Lipinski.
You heard from Beverly, my wife. She took the afternoon to write that comment. I followed a different strategy. I found something in my homework that I'm just going to read that I think gives pretty good reasons for approving this overlay. It comes under the snappy title of Division 5 Residential Rental Restriction Overlay Districts. It's part of the City of East Lansing Code. And it says that these districts establish 3 levels of restrictions which operate to preserve the attractiveness, desirability, and privacy of residential neighborhoods by precluding all or certain types of rental properties, and thereby preclude the deleterious effects rental properties can have on a neighborhood with regard to property deterioration, increased density, congestion, noise, and traffic levels, and reduction of property values. The goal of the overlay district is to allow owners of property within residential neighborhoods, as we did with the 2/3 petition, to control the types of rental properties, if any, that are permitted in one-family dwellings within their neighborhood. It is also the purpose of these districts to achieve the following objectives: to prevent excessive traffic and parking problems in the neighborhoods, minimize noise, congestion, and nuisance impacts, and to maintain an attractive community appearance and provide a desirable living environment. That puts it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Molly Spunner.
Molly Spooner, 815 Stewart. I just want to note I am in support of the R01 overlay for all the reasons that have been stated. We love our neighborhood and we have young kids, and I feel safer not having short-term rentals around the corner. And there were applicants for that. It is a real threat. Once that starts, it's a boulder rolling downhill. Our schools need long-term residents to fill our schools. And there are, if you look at the data, 60% of East Lansing housing is already rental. So there's very few long-term resident houses in our city, and we want to keep what we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Struggling with some of these. Barb Soper?
Were we close?
Or, yeah.
Maybe you start reading the address.
Yeah, I'll start reading the address.
You gotta tell us how to really say it.
It's Barb Soper, and
I'm a
I've
friend, so.
1129 Sunset. And the person I bought the house from is here at the meeting tonight. But I came here to give you a people's history lesson about the overlay. When I was born, my dad worked for the Reichert Lumber Company, and he built a home for my mother and me at 1121 Sunset Lane. As the family grew, he had another piece of property on the corner and built a home next to our home on Sunset for a family called the Ostermeyers. And then when we grew as a family of 5, he built on Clarendon Road, 410. Okay, that's one generation. When I had my children, I lived out east for 20 years. I came back to Glencairn because the neighborhood was established. Most of the neighbors were there. In fact, the man who watched me grow up, Dr. Pfister, was still living on Sunset. I came back and raised my 2 children there. There's 3 generations. Now, my grandchildren, whom I take care of, are being raised on Sunset Lane. And this is not about that or the laws or anything. This is about people and their families and how they want you to walk and talk and recognize people in your neighborhood. And when I walk, if I ever fell, people don't know my name, but I know they'd help because they see my face. And I wanted to address one comment. When I bought my house, the woman who lived across from me was Dr. Nanette Reynolds. She was head of the Civil Rights Commission for the state of Michigan, Harvard grad. And she was one of the most amazing neighbors I've ever had. She is now in Atlanta. And I want you to know that her color had nothing to do with how amazing she was. It was just she bought in our neighborhood because her girls would be safe. And that's what I want. That's fine. Everyone has an opinion, but this is our home. And it's for people like me and our children, and now my grandchildren, to be safe and know the people next door. Thank you.
Thank you. David Groves.
Hi, I'm Dave Groves. I'm here on behalf of my wife Judy as well. We live at 219 Oxford Road, if you look at the map. And I want to applaud the observation down here. If I've ever seen a gerrymandering map, one that doesn't make logical sense, even hearing what the legal point of view is, because I can redraw this map several times. We've lived in our house for 46 years. Known Barton for a long time. We have 3 children, all attend Glencairn School. We moved there when Tommy Raines assured us of the sanctity of a Glencairn neighborhood. And we have stayed there rather than move because of the family warmth of the neighborhood. We are excluded from this overlay. I support the overlay. We could be right next door to us, excluded after 46 years of living on Oxford, still considering myself a Glencairn resident. And by the way, I never was offered a petition to sign. I went to several different neighbors in my immediate neighborhood, only to be told how confused they were over what really was being covered. Was it Airbnb? Was it having a healthcare worker come live with me to take care of me? Or was it something more extensive, as it turned out to be? But the fact is, the process was not, you talk about the Glencairn Association process. We've been in Glencairn for over 46 years. We're not a part of the discussion. We're never asked to be part of the discussion. I have a neighbor who basically said she was approached by a gentleman who had a petition in his hand, who went to her, and she said, this one doesn't include us. He said, oh, don't worry, we'll take care of that. So the fact is, the way this has been handled has been questionable. Again, I have no idea why, if I live on the north side of Oxford, I'm covered. If I live on the south side, as I do, I'm not covered. And if there's even one home in that area that's rented out, that's going to affect that entire area. I went and chatted with the people across the street. They hadn't thought about, they would be looking across the street at the couches, at the games, at the noise. So the fact is, I support the overlay. I do not at all support this map. I understand it was an original map. I'm still curious to hear why. Was it someone's suggestion, or was it a subjective decision that there's certain parts of the neighborhood that should be restricted? And by the way, we are elderly, and we do have 2 minorities out of 8 houses. 8 houses on Oxford that have been excluded out of this. Coincidental or not, I have no idea. I'm not even going to say it's part of the factor. But the fact is, I'm very, very disturbed of how this, not the concept of the overlay, but how this was drawn up and how a lawyer made a decision based on, and by the way, I could go from Abbott and draw it right straight up Oxford and follow all the rules that the lawyer came up with. Yet they chose not to do that. For some reason, they chose at sunset to take a south turn and then go back east after that. That doesn't make any sense. I hope you take a look at that map up there.
Thank you. Next is Michael Alexanio.
Michael Alexanian, 838 Stewart Avenue, East Lansing. Hey, Dave. I'm one of the old people that Carol was talking about. The Alexanian family has lived at 838 Stewart for over 70 years. I was raised in that house, went through the entire East Lansing school system, Glencairn Elementary, back then East Lansing Junior High School, East Lansing High School. My parents continued to live there after I went away to college. And when my father passed away, or my mother passed away in 1990, my wife Diane and I moved in with my father, and we've been there at the house ever since. So 34 years this year. Maybe I'm jaded, maybe I'm old, but I have a certain concept of what our community in Glencairn is. It's what I grew up with. As I said, I was raised in that house. I'll probably die in that house eventually. Hopefully, when I'm gone, my ashes will be scattered in Shaw Park at the end of the street where I spent so many hours as a young child. But I just want to, say I fully support the overlay. Every time a rental issue has come up over the past 7 years that I can remember in our Stewart Avenue area at least, it has been strongly defeated. If the concept of introducing Airbnbs and rental properties to a beautiful, community of warm, loving people is progress, well, then you can consider me the enemy of progress. I want it to stay just like it is and as it has been for 70 years. And I appreciate the opportunity to voice my opinions, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Sandra Cotter.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Cotter, and I reside at 974 Rosewood Avenue. Carol used to be my neighbor, and I guess I'm one of the newer people in the neighborhood because I've only lived there 22 years. When I was a student at MSU in the early 80s, I'd often run through the different residential neighborhoods in East Lansing just to get a change of scenery and a different vibe. And when I ran through Glencairn, I would think, wouldn't it be so cool to live here one day? And it was an aspirational thing. So my husband and I, together with our daughter, moved into our Glencairn home in 2002, and I was right. It was wonderful then, and it continues to be wonderful. We love our neighborhood, the schools, and the city. The neighborhood is desirable and pleasant because the homes are owner-occupied. Anyone walking or riding through the different areas of the city can tell when they've entered areas zoned for rentals by the noise, traffic, unkempt yards, and the like. We want to maintain the peaceful and pleasant community we have. I also want to address some of the comments that I've read from some opposed to the overlay. There has been contentions that people were very confused about things and didn't know what they were signing. I believe that that contention is somewhat conclusory with no real basis in fact. Of the 149 properties that will be part of the overlay, 100 owners signed the petition, and that is the 2/3 that's required. In my life prior to retirement, I was an attorney practicing in the election law space, and I did a lot of petition work in my 30 years of practice. People don't just sign petitions if you ask them to. When I was presented with this petition, I asked for time to review. We had the informational packet first. We looked at it. I discussed it with my husband, and then I went to Megan Holland's house to sign the petition. My guess is that I'm not terribly unique in that, and that people care about the neighborhood and want to make sure that they're doing the right thing for it. So I very much support this, and I am hopeful that you will recommend approval to the City Council. Finally, I do want to thank the staff for putting together a really helpful graphic. I found that very helpful to understand when a rental license is needed and what we can expect in the different overlay districts. So I appreciate your time, and I really do hope that you will recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Sally Newton.
My name is Sally Newton. I live at 939 Sunset Lane. My husband and I have lived here for over 40 years. We were surprised to learn this fall that we were not part of an overlay after having signed a petition many years ago. So with the help of our city, we were able to put together this overlay, and they helped us with the process. We have lived in, as I said, in Glencairn for over 40 years, settled here for many of the same reasons that young families today still admire and find desirable our Glencairn neighborhood, because it is affordable. It's for both, there are many seniors as well as young families. We are close to the schools and parks and downtown restaurants and businesses, a diverse university. Our neighbors know each other. We're walkers and dog walkers. And we know the kids who gather at corners to catch the buses to school. We know the families who walk with their children to Glencairn Elementary School. We're neighbors who work and volunteer at every level, not only in our neighborhood schools and community groups, but also in our city, our university, and our state. We organize fundraisers for food banks and clothes closets and libraries and Haven House and many other opportunities. We are contributors. We are East Lansing youth coaches for soccer and baseball and robotics and scouting groups. We're tutors and mentors and builders of at the cyclotron and Fribs. We're teachers and counselors and artists and musicians. We're neighbors who jump in when there's a pandemic and help young families. We are volunteers at Wharton Center and for in-house performances as well as outreach programs. We're volunteers for WKAR, the Broad, historical museums. We love our neighborhood and our city and our university community. We are committed stakeholders in the success of our city. We recognize the importance of affordable housing choices, including residential overlays, and we hope to move forward with our R01. Thank you.
Thank you. James Newton?
My name is James Newton. I live at 939 Sunset Lane. I'm here in support of the overlay district. I was going to start with reading the ordinance also, but that's been done, so I won't repeat it. But I think that it's interesting to note that the reasons for the overlay have in fact been codified in the East Lansing City Code. The concept of an overlay did not just happen. It did not exist in a vacuum. It existed because people wanted it. And the reason that we're in front of you today is because people wanted to change that people wanted to seek rental licenses. And so, likewise, this isn't just some idea that came up and said, well, let's see if we can work for 6 months and put together an overlay just for the fun of it. We have, where'd Molly go? Molly put this together. She gets all the credit.
I went to FedEx.
Okay, so FedEx gets some credit. Why don't we stand in front of it there? This is kind of a chart of the core of East Lansing. It's not the whole city. It doesn't include the northern tier. It doesn't include the Flower Pot, parts of Kalamazoo Avenue. It doesn't include east of Hagedorn. But all the colors here represent different types of rental units. What's significant is to note that the light blue are single-family resident homes that have been converted to rentals. Now you'll note in the center of Chesterfield Hills and in the center of Bailey, there's very few. It's like a donut. That's because they have overlays. Overlays work. The other thing somebody else mentioned is that, maybe it was Molly, 60% of East Lansing is already rentals. Okay? So the proposal we have in front of us is to try to keep part of East Lansing a friendly neighborhood that's welcoming and can be enjoyed by families. We don't want to take single-family residences and convert them to rental units. Maybe recently you've seen the New York Times article about college football sacks housing markets nationwide. Okay? Maybe you noticed it was one of the bowl games. They specifically advertised, a new company I'd never heard of, advertised for rental units in college towns. I want to make sure that I don't leave out something. There was a recent Harvard Law and Policy review that said short-term rentals reduces the affordable housing supply by distorting the housing market, and that these conversions limit the supply of affordable housing, making it difficult for young people to move into the city. The decreases of the supply of housing spurs displacement, gentrification, and segregation. I also want to point out that in a 2001 housing strategical report that was done by the City of East Lansing, it was section F, says the purpose of rental overlay districts are to allow the owners of property within the R1, R2 zoning districts to further control the types of rental properties permitted in single-family dwellings within their neighborhoods and to help preserve the attractiveness, desirability, and privacy of residential neighborhoods by precluding all or certain types of rental properties and thereby avoiding the potential impacts of rental properties can have on a neighborhood with regard to property deterioration, increased density, congestion, noise, traffic levels, and a reduction of property values. They go on to say, we recommend the continued utilization of the overlay districts while offering other programs such as Neighborhood Improvement Authority going forward to encourage reinvestment in neighborhoods as well as to encourage conversion of those detached units back to owner-occupied units. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Scott Spunner.
Hi, good evening. My name is Scott Spooner. I live at 815 Stewart Avenue. I'm an infant compared to all the seniority in the room. I've lived there for 3 years, and I absolutely love East Lansing. I came from a northern Michigan community that had rentals in the neighborhoods, and unfortunately lived next door to one. It was extremely difficult. I had young children. Today they're 10 and 8. Back then they were brand new, 1, 2, 3 years old. What we had to put up with was horrifying. The parties, the noise, the violence, the trash. It's something I definitely don't want to see in our wonderful community. I just ask that you support this R01 overlay, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Ricardo Mejia.
Mejia. I live in 225 Oxford Road. I was gerrymandered out of the overlay. So I just want to, first of all, maybe the youngest here, lived for 7 years. I'm a professor in MSU. I agree and I like the overlay, but I like it to include my property as well. So my request is that please suggest to change that design that makes more sense, that includes the community, that should have been consulted and included in this decision. Because it was said that there were a lot of meetings among neighbors. I'm a neighbor, I was never invited, right? So I've never knew that this was going to happen. And I never signed any paper accepting or rejecting this because no one visited me. So I think that I've been excluded without my knowledge of what's happening. Thanks to David Groves, my good neighbor, I knew that I was excluded of this. Otherwise, I would have never known, right? So again, I support the idea of the overlay, but not the way it is designed now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Kristen Panak.
Hello, I'm Kristen Pennick, 227 Clarendon Road. I've lived in East Lansing for, I think, 24 years now. I'm also a registered architect, and I have concerns about the overlay. I am not opposed to all overlays. I'm not opposed to having an overlay. I am opposed to this overlay with this configuration with the boundaries. First of all, the R1 versus the R3, there was never any opportunity given before this went out to discuss what is the correct overlay for us if we were to want one, what are the advantages and disadvantages of it. Personally, I can see a situation, here I have a 3 to 5 bedroom house, depending on how you count it. I'm going to be an empty nester next year with my husband. I can totally imagine a scenario where I might want to have a graduate student live with us. For a year or two or something along those lines. That's prevented by the R1. That would not be prevented by the R3, where places like, say, Lantern Hill has an R3. I mean, those, I believe, it would be permitted in that situation, and an R3 would take care of a lot of the headaches and the discontent I think a lot of the people who are fighting the overlay have. The other one is related, the next point is related to the boundaries. I live in the gerrymandered nose in the end of Clarendon. Everybody's been referring to how they were drawn, 227. No one across the street from us is included in this overlay. Oxford is not included. North Lawn is not included. I work together with the group and with the city to produce a competing overlay, which would be R3, which had much more Cartesian armature, shall we say, to the boundaries. It included the north side of Clarendon. It included the south side of Oxford. It included the section with North Lawn, and it squared it all off. And now I'm going to disagree with the city attorney's opinion on not permitting that and returning to a boundary like you're seeing here, because the language is where practicable, it shall consist of streets and such. If you take a look at the north side of Clarendon and you take a look at the 1946 plat of East Lansing, the north side of Clarendon was included, the south side of Saginaw had not been platted yet. So there is a natural east-west straight boundary. You can see this where the utility lines run and all up on that north side of Clarendon behind the houses. You could square that boundary off and include parts of Sabrin going across and going straight down, and it included everybody. It was a way more inclusive boundary. I have issues with having rental properties across the street from me allowed, but not being able to myself. So the people across the street, as you've heard from many people, were never even notified that they were being left out of this. I think normally when you have a major planning decision like this and people within a certain number of feet of the affected area are notified, they were never notified. And many of them want to be included if there is to be an overlay. You need a minimum of 50 properties to form a new overlay. When you include the nose on the end of Clarendon, if you include that, it breaks up the remaining properties, the parcels, so you do not get a critical mass of 50. So I would suggest that you expand the boundaries back to what we had proposed to the city in the competing overlay, or at a minimum, get rid of that nose on the end of Clarendon so that those remaining property owners, it protects their right to form a boundary and to form an overlay in the future so that they can get the minimum 50.
The other issues that I have include no fault to the people who are putting the petitions around, but there was no map included in the information that went out 2 days prior to signing the petition. People who signed the petition, many of them did not even know that across the street was not included. And there are people who tried to get their names removed from the petition. And I'd just like to make sure that the 100 properties that were included, that none of those names are people who had put their names into the city saying, please remove my name from the petition, if you can confirm that. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, quick question. I haven't seen your proposed boundary. I'd be interested to see it. I think the rest of the commission maybe as well. I don't know if it was in the agenda packet, but.
Andy, Landon?
No, we received the competing petition, or the competing map, I guess, and ran it through the same process with the city attorney review, and the city attorney returned it as not meeting the requirements, so we asked for an amendment, but we haven't received that. Because it hasn't been, I guess, moved forward, and it hasn't been introduced, it wasn't included in this packet.
Understood, thank you, but it could be written correspondence to the commission, I think.
Can I ask a follow-up question, actually?
Commissioner Denault?
Can we have some explanation from the city attorney as to how it did not meet the qualifications?
Yes.
Not right now, but when we eventually see it.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, at the informational meeting next week, myself, Annette Irwin from our department, and the city attorney and probably the city manager will all be there. So the city attorney is going to go through line by line and discuss his decisions.
Thank you. Normally the applicant's here and we can ask them questions, but so I guess you're it for now.
Sure.
You know, the timing of this meeting coming up is interesting because, you know, I don't know how that would shape the discussion of what this boundary looks like or what classification it is. And, you know, I'll just say for me it's difficult to determine what should or should not be included within the boundary. So I think, you know, that explanation would be helpful. You know, before I go off on any other tangents, is there any other questions from commissioners?
I just have a
Commissioner
clarifying
Lapine?
question for Landon. And forgive me if you've already said this. So there was some discussion about, you know, certain houses wanting to be added, others wanting to be removed. Am I correct in that in order for a house to be added, there would have to be additional signatures signed? Like additional people would have to join the petition to add additional homes, or no?
I believe he said earlier that we could modify the proposal that's before us when we make a recommendation to council.
You can make suggestions to council, and council can modify the boundaries. If there were to be a change to the existing petition to enlarge this, for example, that petition would have to have a 2/3 majority of all the properties within the district. Now, 149 properties is shown. Presumably 49 of those did not sign or did not want to sign. But as long as 2/3 of the property owners within the proposed district have signed, then it can be introduced.
Okay, I got it. Thank you, that helps.
Sure.
No, we're not through a public comment. Any additional members of the public wish to come forward?
Will we receive clarification on, again, Oxford Road, where there's 8 houses excluded, all the rest are included, north and south?
Yeah.
8 houses are excluded. And how can that make any objective sense when our houses are no different? We've been there 46 years. The fact is, I don't know how you justify that. I'm sure your lawyer has a legal definition that needs to be looked at, because you have 8 houses.
Could you come up to the
south
microphone?
side
Sorry.
Excluded.
Could you? Yeah, I know, but he can come up again. I can't. Sorry. Could you come to the mic?
Oh, I'm
Just
sorry.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm usually told not to speak into a microphone, so my question is, I'm hoping we can get a rational, understandable explanation of, let's use Oxford as an example, where the entire street, 8 houses only were selected not to be included. And those people want to be included in the overlay. We believe in it. And nobody on the north side was excluded. Again, only for 8 houses on the south side, the rest were included. It doesn't make any sense in terms of people who pay their taxes in East Lansing, who've lived in Glencairn for 45 years, who support the neighborhood in the same way that we've heard so eloquently tonight. We had many, many chances to move away, did not, because we love Glencairn. 3 kids graduated from all the schools in Glencairn. We were not given an option here. We're being told, hey, your next door neighbor could now rent out.
Okay, thanks for the question. Do you have enough information to go on? I defer to you on how you want to respond to this. I know I can't. So.
Your explanation to me on the phone, I believe that was you I talked to, about alleys and streets, and I looked at the map, it just made no sense given the reality of the situation of where people live, how the neighborhood has changed, the history of the neighborhood. So please come back at your meeting if you're going to, we want to be included. Ricardo wants to be included. We want to be included. We're one of those 8 houses on Oxford. No reason for us to be excluded. And if that isn't, I don't know what else term to use, illogical or discriminatory, I don't know what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just make one quick point?
Please, come to the microphone, please.
I'm Donna McGovern. I live at 1045 Sunset Lane in Glencairn, and I love my neighborhood. I love my neighbors. I'm a big proponent of the R01 overlay. The one thing I just wanted to point out quickly is some gentleman over here had mentioned that there's only a couple of rentals shaded in that quirky map. Those are the licensed rentals. So I just want to point out that there are several unlicensed rentals in our neighborhood that aren't on the books, and many of us probably know 3 or 4. I could give you the addresses right off the bat. So just to keep that in mind as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Please come forward.
I had not originally intended to speak, but I want to offer a correction. No one who has spoken against the overlay in any of the meetings that I have been is in favor of rentals. All of the discussion has been about rentals. No one is in favor of rentals. Or if they are, they'd be howled out of the room pretty quickly, I think. The problem with the R01 is it restricts non-paying guests, all right? Non-paying guests are being defined as tenants and restricted. Now, at the council meeting, we were presented with all the exceptions to the non-paying guests. To have one of those exceptions tends to be quite onerous and bureaucratic. If you want to do the 2-year sabbatical, the city has to know who's in your house, where you're going, when you're coming back. If you want to have a caregiver, it's not a friend that comes in and takes care of you. It has to be a prescribed caregiver, whatever that means. And I'm in healthcare, all right? And I can tell you in terms of reimbursing caregivers, it's usually not more than a couple of days or a week. So if you, as happened in the AIDS crisis, if for some reason you needed a friend to come in and take care of you, that person is, as I understand it, would be restricted. So no one is in favor of rentals, or very, very few people are in favor of rentals. What we're concerned with is the restrictiveness of the R01 overlay for non-paying guests. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, could you give us your name and
Yeah,
address?
could you please give us your...
1065 Sunset.
Okay, I don't know if I got that, but does anybody else wish to come forward? I'm hearing there may be somebody from that area. No? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone online in the queue?
There's nobody waiting in the queue.
Great, thank you. At this point, we will close the public hearing for this agenda item and move on to item 6.2. Oh, before we do that, is there any further questions or discussion from?
I just have one quick comment. The FedEx map, if you will, is there a way, it's hard to read, hard to really track what that looked like from here. Is there a way we can send that into a PDF? Can we get can we have a copy of that somewhere?
I think the city.
I believe that's the city's GIS.
Oh, okay. So that would be a nice addition to the next packet. I'd like to see that.
First of all,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chapin, let me just let you know that I've heard about your work at the schools, and you're just a hero of mine from all you did for our schools. But I know. Anyway, that map is a GIS map that the city publishes, and I can email it to the committee. So I just did a screenshot of it, and you can actually, it's really cool. You can find all the different classes of licenses, and it doesn't give the number, but we hand counted them, and they were in the thousands of rentals.
So you have that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I can supply that map for the commission's next discussion.
I think that'd be helpful, thank you. That's even smaller than theirs, so. Seeing no further discussion, I believe we will see this item at the next planning commission meeting. Thank you all. That brings us on to item number 6.2. A request to construct a single-story multi-tenant retail building with drive-through window and parking lot at 210, 218, and 224 West Lake Lansing Road. Mr. Bartley?
Thank you. So, as you mentioned, we have a request at 210, 218, and 224 West Lake Lansing. These three properties are located on the north side of Lake Lansing Road, just west of Abbott Road. I'm going to pause for a second to let the audience leave the room.
Thank you.
All right. So the three properties in question would be combined if approved for this special use and site plan. Combined area total is just over an acre, about 46,700 square feet. These are all currently vacant except for a non-conforming residential structure at 224. That's the easternmost parcel of these three that are shown on the map. The reason that's non-conforming is due to the property's zoning. They're all currently zoned B5, which is Community Retail Sales Business District. In the B5 district, retail stores are permitted uses with site plan approval, and drive-through uses require special use approval. So the applicant is proposing and requesting to essentially remove the building that's on 224. I'm going to come up to the site plan real quick. It's essentially to remove the existing structure at 224 Lake Lansing. All existing structures and I guess structures on the site, including paving, including existing fencing, and also several mature trees that are shown on the plan as woods. So the property would essentially be made completely vacant, and then the applicant proposes to construct a single-story multi-tenant retail building with an area of about 6,000 square feet. What's proposed exactly is 5,952 square feet. Floor plan proposed is to a 2,050 square foot restaurant space at the west end. You can see on the site plan on the screen, the drive-through lane would go around the building from the east, around the building to the north, and then the window would be on the west end, which is where the restaurant is proposed. And then the remaining spaces would be white box retail spaces. We believe there would be 3 spaces for other tenants comprising the rest of the building. The access to the site, you have an existing access from Lake Lansing on the adjacent to the site to the west. That's a shared access drive, and the applicant would propose to use that and not create any new driveways onto Lake Lansing. So you'd have vehicles entering from Lake Lansing along the west side of the property, the entry drive there south of the building with a 24-foot wide drive aisle and a total of 41 spaces, including spaces to the south, about 30 spaces down to the south of the building, and then spaces along the east side as well. The drive-through lane that wraps around the north end of the building has 10 stacking spaces that would be included for that. I should mention, as far as pedestrian and bike access as well, you have a concrete walkway that's proposed from the sidewalk along Lake Lansing. Along the west side, crossing the drive access aisle, or the parking lot access aisle here. Just to the southeast corner of the building, at which point pedestrians would cross to another concrete walkway right in front of the building to access the stores. Bicyclists coming from Lake Lansing would also use that walkway or could use the shared access drive. And there are bike racks, two hoop racks that would accommodate a total of 4 bikes that are proposed next to the walkway. As far as landscaping goes, you have perimeter landscaping surrounding the perimeter of both parking. You have a line of trees along the west, north, and east sides of the parking lot, as well as many small shrubs. I think there's about 150. And then you have new trees proposed to be planted closer to Lake Lansing in front of the building. So I think that covers essentially the proposal, essentially removing everything on these 3 sites, combining them, and constructing a new 6,000 square foot single-story multi-tenant retail building with a drive-through lane that wraps around the east, north, and then to the west, which requires special use approval. So this is a public hearing. Can I answer any questions before we move on to any comments or concerns from the audience?
I defer to the commission first. Is there any questions for Mr. Bartley? So you said 10 stacking spaces, so that conforms with requirements, correct?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, the proposal essentially meets all requirements of the zoning ordinance.
And then I was trying to locate the bicycle parking. I believe it's in the southwest. Could you pinpoint where that is? And they've met the requirements there.
Can I zoom in? Here we go. So I'm
looking at page 26. I didn't see it on the rendering.
Is that the site plan?
Yeah,
Sorry.
page 26
Okay.
of the site.
I have a different page count for some reason. So here I'm showing right on the screen. I'm pulling up the entrance and a vehicle or a bike coming up the entrance drive. When you enter the site, the bike racks are just north of that entrance drive, sort of on the island between the access drive and the entry or the parking lot. This little box with the 2 squiggles, those are meant to be bikes. So that's 4 bike parking spaces as required by code.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, thank you. Is there a sidewalk at the front of the property? It looks like there's a detention basin there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not the front of the property is not proposed to have any walkways. The walkway is limited to the west side, west boundary along essentially the west side of the parking lot.
Okay, and that meets requirements?
Yeah, except I'm noticing that we have shrubs right in the middle of the sidewalk, but we can certainly adjust that during permitting if this is approved. Yes, sir.
Might be tough to grow those. Vice Chair Wagner.
I have just a quick question. So I'm looking at the memorandum from Stephen Clayton, Engineering Administrator, on January 3rd, and there are like a little over a page and a half of concerns that he raises about this project. Is that normal to have that many? I mean, some of them seem to be pretty minor, like they missed a word. It should be City of East Lansing instead of county or whatever, but it seems like a lot of issues. I mean, is that normal, or is that something we should consider?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I guess I would characterize the engineering comments as not unusual.
Not unusual.
Yeah.
Okay.
And generally the comments were of changes that can be made during permitting if approved.
And as a follow-up, I mean, I suppose that's a question for the applicant, but those issues are being worked out with engineering and, being addressed by the applicant.
And certainly the issues, I mean, we can adjust plans before this returns to you in 2 weeks for action as a recommendation to council and/or before it gets to council for their decision. So we'll continue to make plan adjustments as needed. Is there Commissioner Chenault?
Yeah. I read in the packet that we were expecting to also see a more defined landscape plan, and that was not included in the packet. Could we see that?
The landscaping is essentially what's shown on the site plan can be considered the landscape plan for all intents and purposes, and it meets the requirements of the ordinance.
Then you said it was 4 retail possible white box locations? Okay.
Yeah, the preliminary floor plan at least has a 2,000 square foot restaurant and then shows 3 tenant stalls to the east. The floor plan could certainly be adjusted if needed. We don't have requirements for minimum or maximum size of retail.
And those, remind me, do those have to be 4 separate retail locations? Could they be combined into a large?
They could be combined, sure.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, I believe we're ready for the applicant.
Thank you, Chairman Sullivan and Planning Commission for hearing us tonight. My name is David Christian. I'm with DC Engineering. Just a couple quick little corrections here. We do have a separate landscaping plan sealed by a landscape architect prepared by Element Studio. I'm not sure if that didn't get into the end of the packet there. That does clear up the issue with those trees, which my designer set in the middle of the sidewalk because we can't plant those trees or those shrubs in that location. So that will certainly address. I had one other comment to add to this.
While you're collecting your thoughts, can I just make a note that, can we have that landscape plan
Absolutely.
for the, thank you.
We'll make sure that landscape plan, as mentioned by the applicant, will be in your packet next time.
Thank you. Yeah.
And in regards to the engineering comments which we received, I received those comments, I guess maybe it's been about 4 hours ago, but I've been here for 3 of those hours, so I've just had a chance to look at those. I've read through the comments. There really is nothing there which is unusual or difficult. I will certainly have a revised plan over to the city in the next 3 or 4 working days. So,
Thank you.
and besides that, I'm here to answer any technical questions you may have.
Are there any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Denault?
And maybe this is not a question that you can answer since it's not so much an engineering question as maybe for the applicant. Are there any ideas as to who the tenants for the new construction might be?
At this time, I don't know any of the tenants. I do have Ilias here with me, and he can speak more directly to that.
Well, if I can mention from a staff perspective, the tenants can't really be considered as part of the land use decision, but you're certainly welcome to ask about them.
Hi guys, my name is Elias Dowdy. I'm one of the developers. It's 3 of us. It's going to be our first project doing something like this, so it's just a learning process with going through all this. So it's going to be 4 units. Like Dave said, we're not sure who's going to be reaching out. So once we finalize everything, we will market it out. But as of right now, we don't know.
Commissioner Denault?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I just had one other question. I noticed that it was still maybe pending if a new traffic study would have to be done. Have we come to any conclusion on that? I only ask because I actually use this intersection quite a lot to go to the dog park, and I can tell you that left-hand turn from Lake Lansing onto Abbott is always backed up, and it is awful.
Yeah, and we've discussed the trip generation numbers will be supplied by the applicant. Our initial review, we didn't believe that it would be to the level to warrant a traffic impact assessment or study. But Mr. Christian will be doing the trip generation numbers presently, and we'll have those for you and be able to understand whether or not additional study would be needed by the next meeting.
Question about the sidewalk. So I'm sorry, I'm going back to this. So at the south border of the property bordering on Lake Lansing Road, there's no sidewalk on the rendering, is there? So where the shrubs that are there on the rendering, is that where you anticipate putting a sidewalk? Because I'm looking at the current properties there, and there's a sidewalk that runs from Abbott west.
We have an east-west sidewalk on the north side of Lake Lansing Road, the entire frontage.
Okay.
And then we have an access sidewalk back to the building on the west property line going north.
That was my concern, given that there's a lot of bike trails in the area, and you have bike racks, and it's likely a concern. So that's it on the rendering.
So what's showed on the rendering along the south boundary of the property line, where it says CONC, concrete, that's the walkway, and then you have the new proposed concrete walkway that would go to the north.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying. Sure. Commissioner Denault?
I just had questions about maybe the surrounding parcels or residents. I know it's mentioned in the packet that on the north, right, there's the apartment complex there. And I was in that, you know, y'all might plan to do some sort of sound mitigation, you know, pending on the tenants of the new structure. I'm wondering if, so I have two questions. I'm wondering if y'all have reached out to any of the tenants in that apartment complex or the management association to let them know about the potential for the new construction and to maybe get their thoughts or responses. And my second question is actually for Landon, so I'll let you go ahead and answer the first one.
No, we have not reached out to the neighbors to the north and talked to them about the proposed development.
Do you plan to?
No.
And then Landon, my next question is, what is up with that 180 Lake Lansing, like that tiny single-family house that is right next to this planned development?
There is a house on a property next to this.
Okay.
That's about what's up. I don't mean to sound flip, but I don't have details on that.
I ask that,
Yeah.
like, if there's someone living there, I ask so that I can come back over here and ask, have you spoken at all to the resident at 180 Lake Lansing to let them know that this structure is going in right next to their home?
No.
Okay.
We have not reached to any of the neighboring properties to discuss it.
Staff has, as far as the
Thank you.
public notice goes. So for this public hearing, we issued the public notice to all property owners within 300 feet. As we did for the record for the Glencairn Overlay District request, we in fact sent I know this is not on the same item, but just so you know, we did send a postcard to everyone within that overlay district and also 300 feet outside, as we do with practice.
Excellent, thank you.
Sure.
I promise I have no other questions.
They're good questions. Vice Chair?
I have a question. So I'm getting late. My eyes are a little bit tired. Can you go back, Landon? Can you go back to the map that we're looking at with the cars around?
Yeah.
I don't know what that drawing is called. Yeah, I think it's page. I'm just trying to figure out. So the proposals for a restaurant of like 3,000 square feet, and then 3 white box stores. I'm not quite sure. Are the stores going to be in front, or can you tell me a little bit about the layout?
Yeah.
This just looks like one box. I don't quite understand the distribution of the
The layout will
building.
be fairly traditional strip mall with all the doors, all the primary entry doors will be facing south to Lake Lansing Road.
Okay.
The coming around the backside is just for the drive-through stacking lanes, the emergency bypass lane, and we have in the northwest corner of the property the dumpster, so your trash service trucks will come around the backside of the building and do their servicing there.
So people, will there be back exits to the restaurant or to the the businesses there? Will they have to go? I mean, if they want to take trash out or something, will they have to go through? Will they have to go through the stacking to get to dumpsters or anything? I don't see a very. I don't see a clear path out of the back.
Perhaps and doors on the west side, but I'll defer to you to answer
Okay.
that.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding the question. My hearing's
It's the question, yeah, I think that, as I understood it, is for the workers of the potential restaurant, it looks like that you have on the west portion of the property, if they need to get out and take out garbage, where are they exiting? Are they gonna be exiting through the north, which is through where you anticipate having the cars stacking, or are they gonna be exiting through the west of the building?
There will be service doors for staff on the north side, maybe emergency egress doors on the north side of the building. The public will all come in on the south side of the building. Those will be your main storefronts.
Which, I suppose leads to the next question of where is the garbage on the rendering?
If I may point it out, at the northwest corner, you'll see a call out that says dumpster pad with vertical wood slack enclosure, and that's located just at the northwest corner of the parking lot.
Okay.
Sort of just a square or a rectangle.
Okay. Understood. So, and it's 4 locations, and it's anticipated to be 4 separate retail locations and not one big combined location?
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Parking is provided for nominally, I think we have a 2,000 or 2,500 square foot restaurant space, and the balance of the building is for retail, so.
Okay. Any additional questions? I thought you were going to raise your hand. You were acting like you were going to raise your hand. It's your go-to move. Yeah. Seeing none on this end, I believe that's all the questions we have for you. Thank you for your time. At this point, we will open up the public hearing for this proposal. Are there any members of the public that wish to come forward and address the commission? Seeing none, is there anyone online in the queue?
There's nobody waiting in the queue.
All right, thank you. We will see this agenda item presumably at the next meeting in 2 weeks. Thank you. So that brings us on to old business. Item 7.1 is first up, the request of the Mullin Family Investments LLC to add 4 parking spaces, a new service shed, and paved drive access and retaining walls, walkways, and other site features at 2111 Merritt Road.
Yes, so this property is highlighted on the map. This is just in the sort of intersection between Saginaw to the north, Park Lake to the east, and Merritt Road to the south. It's an existing medical office building with, let's see here, I'll go to the zoning map. It's currently all zoned B1 general office business, and the use of medical office is proposed to remain the same. What the applicant is proposing is essentially to add 4 parking spaces at the front of the near the front entrance, as highlighted in gray here on the site plan. Restripe existing parking to essentially add a couple spaces just in excess of the requirement. Add a driveway on the west side of the property, and infiltration swale, and a 1,500 square foot service building shown here as proposed shed, 50 by 30 at the northwest corner of the property. That would be significantly lower than the grade to the north along Saginaw Road, so you have proposed retaining walls. Other site improvements that are proposed include to add a dumpster pad at the far west end of the parking lot, reconstruct walls, retaining walls, walkways, the concrete walkways that are existing, add a couple of, I guess, sort of walkway bridges, and this would not touch at all the wetland that's located to the south, although that wetland was found to not be considered important, I guess. So this is limited to exterior changes only. No changes to the land use is proposed. Just really adding parking spaces. One question that's come up in conversations has been that this will, the total number of spaces would result in, there's a requirement of 40 spaces, but the applicant is proposing a total of 52 spaces. Our ordinance requires that when 50 or more spaces are in a parking lot, or required in a parking lot, then electric vehicle chargers would be required. My understanding of the ordinance would be that the 50 spaces, if the requirement is over 50 spaces, then EV charging stations would be required. But we could also look at this requirement as when you exceed 50 spaces, regardless of the requirement, you should be adding electrical vehicle chargers. So I did want to bring that up and understand if the applicant has any plans to introduce EV chargers to the site plan, or if they'd be open to it. Beyond that, can I answer any questions about the proposal, what's on the site plan, or bring up the applicant?
Yeah, I had a quick, so what was it that triggered this particular proposal getting sent to planning commission? Just because it was a parking lot modification, or because they were adding an accessory building?
Yeah, there were currently 44 spaces in the lot, and the additional spaces essentially were in excess of 5%, which is the maximum that's allowed, that staff is allowed to approve administratively. So because you have an addition of parking spaces that exceeds 5%, that triggered the request to come to the Planning Commission and City Council.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Denault?
Can you, maybe I'm misseeing on the plan, are there trees that have to be removed in order to place the shed? It looks like maybe one or two.
Yeah, I'd have to look back at the existing conditions plan. Let me see here. We have some grading. I don't believe that there are actually trees that are currently existing in this location.
Okay.
No, the existing layout plan does not show trees there.
Okay, that might be my fault. Google Maps says that there's trees, but
Okay. There are trees
I would
immediately
trust
to
a
the
official site map over Google Maps.
Mhm, and the site plan does show a couple trees to the west of the property, but not on the property itself.
Any additional? Vice Chair?
I'm a little confused. Can we move to approve this if it's over 50 spaces and they don't have the CV or EV, whatever, the electric parking spaces? If they're, that's in violation of the city code, right?
Is the applicant here? I don't know if the applicant's here. I don't know if they're online in the queue, but that could be a question that we ask them what their intent is. Or we could add a condition to the proposal requiring them to put an electric charging, I don't know, device, unit, I don't know the official term.
Mr. Chair. So,
Commissioner?
Landon, I'm confused on the 9% versus 5%. There's a requirement, and they've exceeded it. Are they asking for us to give a variance to that? Do we have the ability to do that? So help me understand those.
The difference in the percentages is purely to determine whether or not staff could administratively approve the change, or whether it needs to come to the commission and council.
All right.
So over 5%, which this is, I'm no longer able to approve administratively by a permit only. So that's why we're coming to the council. The applicant, my calculation was that they are increasing by 9%, which exceeds 5%.
All right, thank you.
And, you know, my question previously was, I know in the past, we've had discussions about, you know, what level is something triggered for us to have to review it, and should that possibly be revised? And comparatively, this is a small scale project that's relatively straightforward, with the exception of the wrench that the electric vehicle charging station has thrown into it at the last minute.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I don't really have any qualms personally moving on this tonight with the condition that if there's gonna be 50 parking spots, they need to have some, whatever the right term is, EV charging. I think that's probably a fair request if they're already above what we're used to for parking spots.
I think that's valid, and I think it at this point, if it is determined that they meet the definition of the ordinance and
Yeah.
have to have the charging station, then that should be, I don't know, that's not listed as a requirement, is it? It's not listed as a condition, excuse me, is it?
Correct, because this has come up somewhat recently. I would say that the code, I think my understanding of the code wasn't that it would be required except for when more than 50 spaces are required. But I think that there's merit to looking at it as, well, you're going over 50 spaces, now you should have a EV charger. I think that would be a reasonable condition to include, but I didn't include it because I wanted to discuss here.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions?
Yeah, actually, just a
Commissioner
clarification.
Jacobs?
So if I'm receiving this information from the city, I might just create 50 spaces instead of 52, and therefore avoid the cost of are we allowing that to happen with the motion that we have in front of us?
So often when proposals are passed along from planning commission, there are often minor modifications that are made to it, and that could potentially be one of those modifications. You could word the condition in a way that would require them to have the electrical vehicle charging station if they exceed the required number of spaces. So that would be, if that motion is made, that would be how I would recommend wording it.
Okay.
And, I mean, if I may, I always have to remind myself at least that even if we make the recommendation to city council, I mean, they could just say, we don't want the charging stations and take it back a step. So whatever we recommend, can certainly be revised.
Yeah, but I do believe there is someone in the audience that is a member of council and is also very passionate about electric vehicle charging stations. So. Any additional discussion on? Okay, seeing none, I believe a motion is in order.
I'll try. You guys might need to help me.
You can do it,
here.
Ed.
Yeah.
Okay, so I move to approve the site plan proposed by Mullin Family Investments LLC to add 4 parking spaces, a new service shed with paved drive access, and retaining walls, walkways, and other site features at 2111 Merritt Road, with the following 8 conditions as in the staff report, plus a 9th condition of how many?
I would say
One, at least one. Okay, one electric vehicle charging station.
you could even say the required number of
Are there
electric
required-
vehicle charging stations should it be determined that,
Okay,
You
for
know.
the, yes.
Per ordinance.
Okay, so the 9th condition being the, sorry, my brain has stopped working. So the required number of electric vehicle charging stations per city ordinance.
Moved by Vice Chair Wagner, seconded by Commissioner Hendricks. Any discussion?
I think you gerrymandered around that quite well, actually.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. It was good. I'm sorry. I made another mistake.
No. I always appreciate a good gerrymander joke, especially today. It's topical.
I support.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries. All right. I'll just quickly mention that items 7.2 and 7.3 have been withdrawn from tonight's agenda, so we won't be taking any action on those. So that brings us on to item number 8, new business.
Mr. Chair, why did they withdraw them? Do we know?
Mr. Bartley gave an overview at the beginning where he said essentially, we won't be seeing it at any point in the future. I don't know if you want to add any
understood that.
context beyond that. I know.
Let me pull up the report real quick. The applicant had sent an email saying that they found a different property essentially in a different jurisdiction and will move forward with that.
Yeah.
Their training.
The training center.
Yeah.
It-
So that
They
building-
didn't say it was because of planning commission or anything. They said it was just a different site that was
But
located.
that building is vacant and now will
It is.
remain vacant unless another proposal comes forward.
And I did talk to the applicant about future plans for that site. They said they didn't really know, but they were open to different ideas. In conversations with community members, we have heard ideas about a park. I'm not sure if that would be advisable. It is residentially zoned right now. That could be redeveloped as residential. We also have an existing building that one proposal or idea was to use it as a voting precinct, which would be great a couple days a year, but I'm not sure about the rest of the year. So there's certainly options, but the applicant at this point hasn't indicated how they want to move forward.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the question and for the answer. That moves us on to item number 8, new business. Seeing none. Item number 9, commissioner concerns. Are there any concerns from commissioners? Seeing none. I'll just say, thank you for putting up with us on a late night. That brings us to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Commissioner Overby, seconded by Commissioner Boyd. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. We are adjourned at 9:28 PM.